시청자 여러분 안녕하십니까? YTN과 한국외국어대학교가 공동 주최하는 제4회 중학생 영어토론대회 결승전을 지금부터 중계해드리겠습니다. 2010년 1회 대회를 시작으로 올해로 4회째를 맞이하게 되는 이번 대회는 전국 중학교에서 모인 212개 팀이 치열한 경합을 벌여서 조커팀과 포도인팀이 최종 결승에 올랐는데요. 과연 최종 결승전에서는 어느 팀이 우승할까요? 먼저 대회 중계에 앞서서 오늘 결승전 도움 말씀 해주실 분 소개해드리겠습니다. 지난주 고등학교 영어토론 대회에서도 도움 말씀 주셨던 한국외국어대 통번역대학원 정철자 교수 자리해 주셨습니다. 어서 오십시오.
네, 안녕하세요.
네. 자, 이 중학생 영어토론 대회도 해를 거듭할수록 열기가 뜨거워지고 있는데 올해 예선전 분위기는 어땠나요?
네, 예선전 분위기가 작년보다 훨씬 뜨거웠었는데요.
네.
작년에 저희가 한 160개 팀 조금 더 됐었던 걸로 기억하는데 올해 지금 210개 팀을 넘게 참가를 했어요.
네네.
그래서 열기도 그만큼 뜨거워지고 학생들이 굉장히 진지한 게 보면 굉장히 뿌듯합니다.
예, 그러네요. 정말 팀도 많이 늘어났고 그만큼 또 이게 관심도 많이 늘어난 셈인데
네, 맞습니다.
중학교 대회가 어떻게 이게 처음 만들어지게 됐나요?
저희가 고등학교 대회 하고 난 그 다음 해에 저희가 원래 목적이 영어 능력도 있으면서
네.
비판적인 사고 능력까지 갖춘 정말 진정한 어떤 글로벌 인재를 키울 수 있는 그런 기초를 우리가 한번 제공해보자 하는 거에서
네.
시작을 했었었는데요. 근데 뭐 다들 아시겠습니다만은 언어 능력도 그렇고 비판적 사고 능력이라는 것도 이게 사실 빨리 시작하면 빨리 시작할수록
네.
좋지 않습니까? 그래서 저희가 고등학교 대회하고 연계해서 중학생 대회도 한번 마련해보자 해서 그 다음
네.
해부터 시작을 한 거죠.
그렇군요. 그런데 고등학생 대회도 물론 열기가 뜨겁지만 중학생 대회가 더 관심이 많은 것 같아요.
네,
그러니까
맞습니다.
참가 인원만 해도 팀 수에서도 차이가 상당히 많이 나네요.
예. 그러니까 올해 지금 고등학생 대회가 85개 팀이
네.
참가를 했었었는데 저희 중학생 대회 212개 팀, 그 숫자만 해도 지금 600명 넘게
그러게요.
참가를 한 거거든요.
네. 그렇군요. 자, 그럼 오늘 결승전에 오른 두 팀, 조커팀과 포도인 팀이 어떤 팀인지 좀 소개를 해 주시죠.
예. 지금 조커팀 같은 경우는 EFL 팀으로 등록을 한 팀이에요. 다시 말씀드려서 지금 3명 모두 해외 체류 그 기간이 2년 이하라는 이야기거든요.
네.
그래서 영어를 사용하는 환경에 노출된 게 그렇지 않은 친구들에 비해서 좀 짧다라고 생각을 해서 EFL 팀에 등록을 한 친구였었는데 지금 결승까지 올라왔고요.
오, 대단하네요.
예. 포도윈 팀도 지금 한 학교가 아니라 세 개 다른 학교 친구들이 한 팀으로 구성을 해서
네.
나왔습니다.
예, 그렇군요. 오늘 결승전 주제가 뭐죠?
오늘 결승전 주제는 만약에 기술이 허락만
네.
한다면 부모가 자녀의 성별을 선택할 수 있어야 한다입니다.
네, 그렇군요. 자, 이제 대회가 이제 열리기 전인데요. 이 결승전 주제만 놓고 보면은 어느 쪽이 조금 유리할까요?
주제만 놓고 본다면은 글쎄요, 이제 가장 쉽게 떠올릴 수 있는 게
네.
윤리적인
그렇죠.
문제여서 어쩌면 반대팀이 좀 유리하지 않을까 할 수도 있는데요.
네.
근데 이 토론은 정말 알 수가 없습니다. 논리를 어떻게 전개해 나가느냐에 따라서 우리가 그냥 일반적으로 이게 더 쉽겠지 했던 거를 얼마든지 뒤집을 수 있거든요.
그러니까 토론 주제를 그냥 단순하게 보는 게 아니라 정말 그 어떤 논리를 가지고 어떤 근거를 대면서 이 주장을 펼치느냐 이걸 주요 항목으로 보는 거군요.
예, 맞습니다.
근데 고등학교 대회 때 보니까 이 팀마다 전략도 상당히 중요할 것 같아요.
예.
참가하는 그 토론자 순서라든지 또 질문을 받느냐 마느냐 이런 것들도 보니까 상당히 영향을 미치는 것 같은데요. 어떤가요?
사실 그 3명이 팀을 이뤄서 하기 때문에 3명이 능력이 다 같지는 않을 거예요.
네.
그래서 각자 가지고 있는 그런 능력을 감안을 해서
네.
누가 정의를 가장 잘하는지, 그 정의에 기초해서 누가 좀 이렇게 공격적으로 의견을 잘 내는지, 또 누가 잘 요약을 잘하는지 이런 거에 따라서 순서를 잘 안배하는 거, 그것도 승패에 굉장히 중요합니다.
그렇군요. 자, 이제 대회가 시작되는 것 같은데요. 현장 연결해 보겠습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be actually standing here in this grand final, in this such a great competition. But the fact that I can actually stand here is because and due to my parents' sacrifice. I can stand here because my mom and dad actually did not eat what they wanted and gave me good foods. I can stand here because of the fact that my mom and dad actually gave up wearing good clothes. We say that parents actually know the best about their children and always are sacrificing the best for their children. And this is the exact reason why us, the Joker, on the proposition side, is proposing the motion today. As the Prime Minister, I'd like to first define today's motion. I'll define this House as developed nations, and I have 3 arguments. My first argument is about the characteristics of parents. And secondly, I'm going to talk about the parental right. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about the harms of the current status quo. But before moving on to our first argument, I'd like to set up the model. Parents can choose the gender of their babies, but before they actually can choose it, they will have to take a counseling in which it is set by the government. So they will know the consequence of their action and their decision. Moving on to our first argument, which is about the characteristic of parents. We believe that people are selfish. We always try to actually pursue our own self-interest. However, ladies and gentlemen, it's not the case when it comes to parent-children relationship. Parents always sacrifice their children, their life for the better quality life of their children. No, thank you. Look at you and us. Parents always do not eat the food what they want to eat to actually feed us well. Parents do not wear what they want to actually educate us even more. We tell you that this shows that when it comes to children, nothing else but children, we say that parents always sacrifice themselves for the betterment of children. Some people might say, like, this is not true, but I have 2 responses. First of all, just look into yourself and your parents. And secondly, if that's the case, then we shouldn't actually provide the parental rights that we give to the parents in the status quo, such as what school my children can go. No, thank you. What kind of religion he or she will have. So in the status quo, we believe that the society already assumes that parents sacrifice to bring the best outcome for their children. We tell you that parents' priority is nothing else but for the children. Think about it. Moving on to our second argument, which is about the parental choice. Now, why should we actually respect this? Because we believe that the parents know the best interest of their children for 2 reasons. Firstly, these parents are the people who know and who are aware of the information, most amount of information their kids, of their traits, of their character, or so on. Secondly, we tell you that these parents are the people who actually will pay the cost of living with these children. So the parents is the best actor, not the government, which is blinded, who can make the best decision for their children. For example, our society in the current status quo has a trend to recognize more homeschooling, not just pushing our students just to public education. This shows that how the current status quo is changing, and parental choice must also be extended to a point where the parents can choose the gender of their children. Some people might say the parents should not actually do this because this is something that is permanently actually influencing the children. But every choice, every parental choice that they make actually permanently influences the children. For example, if you're educated with certain form of certain form of morality, then it will be permanent to your life. If you're imposed with your certain religion by your mother, it will also permanently designate your religion. We believe that choosing a gender is no different with this. So moving on to our third argument about the harms in the status quo. We tell you that there are several severe harms. Firstly, even in liberal democratic societies such as the US or Korea, within the society, there are actually small communities which actually, in the current status quo, has the sexist ideas. We tell you that there are certain families within Korea which are very conservative, which prefer male over females, and so on. So, what is the significant harms? Firstly, many times these mothers are actually forced to abort their babies if these babies are not desired. For example, you want a male, but if it's a female, then you will actually just abort it. Secondly, even if, no thank you, parents do not actually abort their children, we believe that their family and the community outside of the parents will actually more likely to ignore the babies. They will be neglecting these children, and they will not actually be providing the necessary love and care that these children need to actually develop fully. We say that this is true because of the fact that community and the family will see this baby as a burden for them. They think the females are actually taking the spot of these male babies. They're supposed to have these male babies. These female babies are actually taking that opportunity. We tell you that as a result, either the babies are actually aborted by their parents or they're neglected by their entire family. We say that this goes against the right to pursue happiness in the status quo. if there are these kinds of harms, and the parents actually know the best of their children and are willing to sacrifice all things for their children, we believe that it should be the parents who can actually select the gender too. However, we do not think that our model actually will cause a significant harm to the sex ratio of these countries. Firstly, these small communities are small simply, and we say that this community, within this community, like sex ratio going up, we say that that's not much of a problem in a larger scale in the US and Korea. Secondly, we tell you that even if there is a harm, I think it's perfectly fine to actually select a gender to actually to provide better quality of life for my kid, because society never owns me, but I own my own life, and I should be responsible for my own life. So do you believe that parents or the government is the best actor to make the decision? It's the parents. That's the reason why we're proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
네, 찬성팀의 조커팀, 대원국제중학교 강주연 학생이 첫 번째 발표를 마쳤습니다. 어떻게 보셨나요, 교수님?
예, 아주 지혜롭게
네.
토론을 시작을 했는데요. 일단 부모란 본질적으로 희생한다. 최선의 선택을 할 것이다.
네.
그리고 자기가 좋아하는 아이면 그만큼 잘 키울 거다라는 정의를 내놨는데, 아주 중요한 거는 선진국을 지금 배경으로 제안을 했다는 게 재밌네요.
네, 반대쪽 얘기 들어보겠습니다.
Because every society begins with life. And how we choose to incorporate the technological development to our basic, most core values on morality, on life, and what it means to be a human being, ladies and gentlemen, that defines and shapes the very society that we live in, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this policy by the government, this may appease the public in the most superficial way possible, but it poses some very big questions, questions related to morality to our society, ladies and gentlemen. And Team Opposition urges you to oppose this motion for the following 3 reasons. First, that this policy is very unethical. And second, that it will result in gender ratio imbalance. And third, how this will result in the parents enforcing gender roles onto their children. But before we move on to our constructive case, we'd like to clarify that we do not oppose to the idea of selecting genders for medical purposes to save lives, and you cannot possibly argue against that. And before moving on, we'd like to look at what the proposition team has told us. Now, their first argument was that parents always sacrifice their lives for their wants and desires for the children, and therefore we should allow this policy. But we say that actually, when the parents are choosing their children's gender, they're not asking the children, ladies and gentlemen. They only choose their gender based on the parents' preferences and their desires, ladies and gentlemen. And therefore, their whole first argument does not stand, because they're not sacrificing for the children. If the parents want a certain gender, then they're choosing their gender, and they're not asking the children, ladies and gentlemen. And onto their second argument, they said the parents know what's best for the children and what's beneficial for the children. Well, then we asked them, we placed the burden on the government to prove why choosing a baby boy over a baby girl is actually harmful for the children, because the fact that they is actually in the child's best interest, ladies and gentlemen. And on the opposition side, we say that parents choosing the gender of that baby can actually be harmful for them, because the fact that the parents chose the gender is that they expect the babies to behave in a certain way. For example, if they chose, a girl over a boy, then they're expecting, maybe we want to take that girl to a pedicure room. Maybe we want to have her dress in a dress. But ladies and gentlemen, we say that can actually be very harmful for the child themselves, and that will be further explained by our second speaker. And moreover, they stated how the parents have the right to choose whatever that has to do with their family. But we say that parents have that right, but we say that the rights are only valid to the point when that doesn't harm a third party, ladies and gentlemen. But because this policy harms the children and also the society, we'd like to oppose this motion. And now let's move on to the arguments of our side. Yes.
It's not changing the gender, selecting the gender before it's decided in the beginning. So you're born as a son or a daughter.
We recognize the point, but that selecting the gender itself does still harm the children because it enforces certain gender roles on the children. And now proceeding on to the first argument, we'd like to explain to you why this policy is unethical. Now, gender does not have any kind of value within it, but selecting a gender implies that there is, ladies and gentlemen. But gender differences are simply differences, and we shouldn't develop a prejudice over this. Now, consider that you're choosing between Africans, Anglo-Saxons, and Asians. And let's assume that you don't have any specific knowledge on the individual traits of these people, but then you simply chose Anglo-Saxons. Now, you chose that person based on their race. Now, we say that when you do this, you made a decision over which gender, which race is better and which is worse. And similarly, when you select your children's gender, you're also making a decision over which gender is better and which is worse. And we say that this is a problem because, ladies and gentlemen, we're discriminating against a certain gender. And furthermore, under this first argument, we'd like to explain to you why this amounts to the parents shaping their children. Now, they're actually choosing the gender of their, children because they want to satisfy their tools and desires. So children actually become tools for the parents to satisfy their wants and desires. But to this, Immanuel Kant tells us that humans must be treated as ends in themselves and not means, ladies and gentlemen, because the humans have an innate value and value in themselves. And we think that along the same line, children are also valuable in themselves, not because they're a certain gender or not because they're a boy or a girl. And now we'd like to move on to the second argument of our side, which is about the problem of gender imbalance and why this policy will actually cause that.
On the point, ma'am.
No, thank you. Now, we think there's a basic reason why women and men exist in society. That's simply nature. But if that nature and if the gender balance is crippled, then there will be inevitably be side effects to the society. Now, when we allow the gender selection, parents will be able to make value judgment over which gender is better than another. And we say that if this policy is passed, then experts will be analyzing each gender on which gender is better and which gender is worse. For example, which gender costs more to raise, or which gender is more intellectually is better. And we think that this leaves a possibility for a perception to spread that a certain gender is better than another. And we think that this will result in huge societal problems. For example, it will lead to a lower birth rate, ladies and gentlemen, because regardless of which gender is more popular, if there's a steep imbalance in gender, then there will be fewer couples and fewer families, which will result in a decrease in the birth rate and thus the population. We also think that this will cause gender-related crimes. For example, we think that this will be caused because if there's a need for love and marriage, when there is no way to fulfill that desire, then actually that does lead to certain sex crimes in a lot of countries. For example, in a lot of underdeveloped countries with huge gender imbalance, there are already a lot of sex crimes, for example, in India and China, and under their definition, they define this house as developed countries. But in certain countries, like countries in the Arab world, even though they're developed, they still have a huge gender imbalance problem, and that leads to a lot of societal problems. And we have proven to you why this policy is unethical, and we've proven to you how this policy can be toxic to the society. And for these reasons, we're very proud to oppose.
네, 반대팀의 포도인 팀의 순회중학교 이초아 학생이 두 번째 발표를 했습니다. 어떻게 보셨나요, 교수님?
예, 지금 그 부모의 본질적인 그 선택의 권리에 대해서 자녀를 어떤 하나의 개별적인 존재로 봐야 한다라는 근거에서
네.
반대팀은 주장을 하고 있는데요.
네.
결국은 윤리적인 문제, 윤리적인 측면에서 이건 옳지 않고 사회적으로도 결국은 여러 가지 성범죄 문제나 출산율 저하 등등의 문제가 있을 거다라고 반격을 했네요.
예. 자, 그럼 다시 찬성팀의 얘기 들어보겠습니다.
I'll try. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay. It's nice to talk about as if children has all these kinds of choices in their life. It's nice to talk about as if children can be born innately and there is no problem in that status quo. But the situation is, that is not the status quo. We see that there are some problems that we analyze from the start of the debate on why sometimes the being innately born can also be a problem in your life, and that also deters and directly tangible harm into your own life and even for the parents. And that's why we had this motion prepared in the first place. So even though you might talk about whatever ethics you want to talk about, if there is a tangible harm that actually deters the development of the child and even gives a bad situation, then we think that it is a right for the parent to choose. But before I go on to the two questions that we have to analyze in this debate about the justification and secondly the harms and benefit analysis, let's see what their policy was. Now, from the start of the debate, the leader of opposition said that they will not accept the selective gender of medical purposes. Now then this shows that they're fearing this case of if there is a tangible harm, then the children should be given the able to right to choose their sex situation. So then we see that if the opposition also understands that if there is a tangible harm of actually having a sex, that's why you have to change the sex. Then we got.
Sir?
No, thank you. In that case, then they gotta also accept that there is a tangible harm by not only the medical cases, but also the status quo, where people condemn you from who you are and for what you are. So then in these cases, if this is an avoidable harm by just changing your sex, I think that this should be changed by the parent's decision. Now let me go into my first question about the justification. Now, they talked about a lot of things about ethics, about how people should be respected for what you're innately born. It's nice to talk about ethics, as I told you, but the problem is that is not the status quo. We see that by the fact itself, there are certain situations and certain regional situations where you're being condemned for who you are. And these are unnecessary harms that are being promoted, no thank you, by the opposition team. Then what we see is that if you just change the gender in the first place, then there could not have been any problem at all. And if the parent, especially in this case as we analyze, if the parent sees this foreseen harm, knows about what's going to happen to these children, then we think that the parent has an obligation and also a duty and also a right to prevent these kinds of harms from happening in the first place. Yes.
If you think that these children are going to be aborted simply for the reason that they're a girl or boy, don't you think that parent can protect these babies? What are you expecting? Do you think the villagers are all going to suddenly mob this child or something?
I'm sorry, but I think you're living in South Korea like good old nations, but the problem is in places like South Texas or conservative families, even in Korea, that is not the case. I know that you didn't live in that kind of environment, but certain people like these really suffer from this, where you're being condemned for who you are. So I think that you got to analyze the situation more carefully. And secondly, the second question about is whether or not it's going to harm or benefit the society. Now, we told you that from the first start, parent has a good intention in their trying to promote these good ideas. We think that these parents actually choose for the best for the child, and that's the reason why we gave the justification. The only rebuttal that came out is that, well, we think that the children should be protected for who they innately are, and this is going to create sexism and sex crimes. But ladies and gentlemen, that is not the case. We think that when the parent decides, then they also consider the environmental factor of where the child is going to live, and also, secondly, we think that this case of this places like India and sex crime increasing, that is not the spirit of the debate. Why? Because as our first speaker clearly defined in the first place, this debate is about liberal democracies where in the nationwide level, there is no much of a preference. But the situation, the problem that we analyze is that specific regions have a lot of problems where there is a discrimination going on. And this is the problem that we wanted to solve in the first place. Now, so even though, ladies and gentlemen, we do allow this, we think that this is not taking the innate characteristic of a child, because the child has not been selected or chosen in the first place of what kind of sex it's going to be. Instead, we're going to give them the parent opportunity for even before they actually have the sex, they're going to be able to decide what kind of sex they're going to have, which is much beneficial for the parent and even to the child. Now, let me go on to my last argument, which is about the genetic disease prevention. Now, they sneakily tried to make this idea that they're going to just prevent the harms of, having medical disease, so that if there's a harm with medical disease, then you're just going to allow this policy. Now, let me tell you why they tried to fear this. We think that genetic disease prevention is very necessary, because there are some body parts that are only being specific to a gender. So, for example, only woman has breasts or men has tentacles. So that's why when their gender is being passed down, it's not only the gender being passed down, but also among with the X and Y chromosome, the sex chromosome, there's also being inherent disease passing down. For example, if there's a mother who has a breast cancer, there's a high possibility for a daughter to have a breast cancer. And if the father has a testicle disease, there's a high possibility for a male to have a testicle disease too. And if they actually know that this is a harm, and that's the reason why the government actually tries to reduce it, then we think that the same harms that we analyzed in the first place by our Prime Minister about the harms of, for example, the perceptional and the social condemnation, secondly, about the burden and everything, should also be taken place. Why? Because as we told you, these diseases as a fact also this being such a male or a female can also as a fact objectively harm the child. For example, it might burden the child and even pressure the child and bully the child for being a female. It might burden the child and pressure the child just because you do not have a good sexual organ being developed as a medical term. So if these harms are quite similar, then we think that this also has the opportunity to understand this harm as the same parallel example, so that they can't always make an exception for medical cases, because the harms that we analyze also is similar to the cases of medical harms that we analyze. So therefore, we think that this is essential to also include the social harms and even medical terms into one policy to make everyone to have a choice in these matters, because the parents can choose the best for them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if a child is going down a road and it's a red sign, and he might possibly get hit by the car, then parents' right and a duty is to know the foreseen harm and to prevent that foreseen harm from happening. As we told you from the start to the end, if there is a foreseen harm of social condemnation, and it's all these medical terms that we're talking about, then we think that this is an obligation for the government and also the parent to choose in whether or not this is going to be beneficial to the child or not for the government to define a blanket policy on what is good or what is bad. So therefore, we're proud to propose. Thank you.
네. 찬성팀의 문재현 학생의 찬성 의견 들어보셨습니다. 어떻게 보셨나요?
예, 이 두 번째 스피커는 자기 첫 번째 스피커 지원하면서 또 반대팀을 공격을 해야 되는데요. 부모는 자녀 보호 본성이 있다는 걸 강조하면서 동시에 아까 그 반대팀이 의학적인 원인이라면 우리가 성별 선택하는 거 억셉트하겠다는 걸 딱 잡아서 그걸 공격을 했어요. 굉장히 현명하게.
네. 자, 그럼 반대팀의 두 번째 주자 유병현 학생의 의견 들어보겠습니다.
Selecting the gender is the alternative of abortion. Now, we think this is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. For first reason, this does not attack the whole root of the problem, ladies and gentlemen. If they're so concerned about abortion, attack abortion itself. We believe there's no necessity of making another policy that doesn't really attack the root problem of these parents having stereotypes against a certain gender. And secondly, they're simply justifying the actions of abortion by simply stating how these parents are actually legitimate to actually make their certain decisions with regard to the gender of these children. Now, they also talked about how gender ratio is not of a bigger problem. However, it's different from when we actually make these changes and when we actually implement such policy. We believe that once these policies are actually implemented, our previous speakers mentioned how there are going to be experts to analyze certain genders of which is better and which is not. And therefore, we believe there's a harm for the gender ratio, and there's thus leading to the gender equality in society. They also talked about how these are going to be used as medical purposes. However, we do not get why they were actually explaining this, because we totally concede to the issue of medical purposes. And we concede to the fact that these things and these policies should actually be used for medical purposes. It is because they need it, ladies and gentlemen. But however, what we're saying is that we're mainly focusing on the fact that these children, the parents' decisions are actually influencing the children itself. We believe that the spirit of the motion and the spirit of the debate mainly lies on these parents deciding over the children's destiny and the children's life. Now that the rebuttals have been set, we would like to go on to our team's third argument, which is about how this policy would enforce specific gender roles. Now, throughout this argument, we would like to prove to you how making a decision with regards to gender itself is merely based on a very wrong assumption, ladies and gentlemen. This is due to the unfortunate fact that these parents and the society expect the children to act in a certain way. Now, the reality that you've already chosen already implies that we expect a certain quality from these children. Now, the quality that certain girls have to be girly, they have to like Barbie dolls, they should be actually carrying, and then they have to go shopping with their mothers. And not to mention, since women are generally agreed to take care of their GPA scores better, this could also contribute to the reasoning of selecting a certain gender. Now, at the same point, parents may actually choose boys over girls. Thus, they are going to be going better relations with fathers, having to do with a lot of sports, be active, be healthier. But we believe this is not always the case, ladies and gentlemen. We do not believe that these gender stereotypes always are the point of where these children are actually thinking of. We believe that is wrong. Now, fundamentally, what we like to point out is how here, it is not always the case, ladies and gentlemen. There are girls that are not interested in studying and shopping, while there are also boys that love Barbie dolls, that love shopping, and we say there's no problem to this. But what the proposition team is asserting is that these should actually be expectations of the parents. And simply because these parents are caring, they are actually implementing such policy of letting these parents to expect something that the children are not capable of. Now, we also believe so basically, we would like to
sir.
strongly assert on how this sort of basis of choosing your child itself is a mistaken because your gender is not mainly the part of deciding your character. It is not who you are that the gender decides, ladies and gentlemen. It's about who yourself is, not the gender, ladies and gentlemen. And the part where the proposition team is focusing on gender, about parenting, we believe that is just absurd to say so. Now, there's an extreme difference among the same male children and extreme difference among the female children. So ultimately, what the proposition is proposing today is a policy that encourages the parents to shape their child into a certain way. Now, this leads to the idea of how such idea and technology would destroy the family in general. Now, the unfortunate fact that more than $10,000 are poured into such policies and technologies tells us how it would pressure the parent and the children in general. Now, so if these children are going against what the parents expected them to be so, parents would force the children to the greatest extent and to the greatest point. And we see a clear problem here where the children are the ones who get the pressure from the parents of being not the ones who they desire for their children. It is not the child's fault for the parents to accuse that they have not acted like a girl, not acted like a boy, and we believe this sort of a stereotype should not be existing in our society. Now, on top of that, because we see that the harms of the family is inevitable, it is detrimental for us to care about the family, ladies and gentlemen. As the rational government, we believe that the families have to love their children and their family no matter what. However, the absurd policy that the proposition is proposing is simply going against the basic values of a family, ladies and gentlemen. Now, even though the parents would maybe not pressure the children to act in a certain way to the biggest extent, the important part here is that the disappointment would actually exist, and the discontent would actually be pressuring towards how these children are acting. Now, and we believe that such disappointment itself is wrong since it creates an unhealthy family environment, and thus it leads to family distortion and family problems when these parents are actually tackling these children of not being what they expected to, not making the expectations of what they actually invested in and what they have actually saw. And we believe that it is just a stereotype from the government team to actually acknowledge the fact that these abortions are actually caused by the fact that these parents want a certain gender. And so that is why we believe, as the opposition team, it should not be an alternative of abortion, but the government should rather promote a bigger value amongst these families because they're the rational ones. The government has the responsibility to take care of these families, of how these policies would actually lead to the distortion of family relation. So that is basically why we, the opposition team, is proud to oppose. Thank you.
네, 포도위 팀의 류병연 학생의 반대 의견 들어보셨습니다. 정리를 해볼까요?
네, 지금 이 반대팀의 두 번째 발표자는 자기 팀 첫 번째 그 발표자의 내용을 좀 더 심화해서 이야기를 한다고 할까요?
네.
사실 찬성팀에 대한 어떤 그런 반격이라기보다는
네.
자기 팀을 좀 더 보강해서 이게 결국은 낙태다.
네.
그리고 이게 어떤 특정 성역할만 강요하게 되는, 그래서 가족 관계가 뒤틀어질 거다라는 쪽으로 자기 입장만 더 강화하는 쪽으로 논지를 펼쳤네요.
네, 그렇군요. 자, 그럼 이번에는 조커팀의 곽준혁 학생의 찬성 의견 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, there was a big contradiction from the opposition side because, first of all, they actually said that in case of medical harm, they will accept this policy, meaning that even in a situation that all the harm that they actually propose will become the same. Why? Because even in the status quo, we told you that our stance is that this is a minor case on these local communities where there are extreme conservative families, then we should allow them to actually have the parents' right to prevent that kind of harm to actually happening. Which means that if it's a minor case, then the same harm will actually come up even if you compare with this medical cases or this genetic disease, which means that their cases, even in their stance, they actually have the same problem. About the gender roles, if we believe that is a status quo, that is the culture, that is the environment that these parents or children live in. And if that's the situation, whether they live in a man or woman, both, they have a gender role. No matter how we have this policy or not, there will be gender role enforced in that specific community. Then if that's a status quo, then why not reduce the harm that these children can get? Reduce how possibly that these children will be actually condemned by that community. Isn't that better for these children? That was our case, and they simply ignored our case. Having that said, there were two major clashes. First of all, is this policy ethical? And second, what is better for the children? I'll start with the first clash. Is this ethical? They talk about how this is a not ethical decision because it leads to gender discrimination. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a gender discrimination because this is a simple gender preference. For example, if I choose to marry an Asian because of my family, because of my environment or the country I live in, and that is why I choose to marry an Asian rather than Caucasian or African, is that a racist? Is that a discrimination based on race? No, because that is a racial preference, which does not lead to discrimination or having values on that situation, because I choose what is best in my situation. It is a freedom of choice. So that is why it's nothing. And also, we say that there's nothing wrong with gender preference. It actually increases the quality of life and the happiness that these children will actually have throughout their life. They talk about how it will lead to the imbalance of sex ratio, but it will not happen. Why? Because it's not going to happen in the national level. It's going to be in a local community, the smaller level. That is why the problems that they analyze is not going to be that big as they analyze. And also, we told you that in Texas and Caroline, there are more conservative families. There's more conservative or even religious groups, even in those developed countries without gender inequality. That is why in that situation, it will not lead to harm, but rather it will help these individuals to actually solve their situation, their life inside that situation, because that's not what government can do for them. It's only what individual can do for themselves. They talked about how gender role, and that will be enforced in the status quo. But even opposition cannot change the status quo. Even without this case, inside some conservative communities, they already have a specific gender role. Men will farm, and women will do the household activities. And if that's the status quo, what we can change is that men, if they're more respected, and women are more condemned by the society, then we can choose. We can prevent the harm that it will lead to this individual, these children. And why is that a harm? Because in both cases, there will be gender roles, but in the government's case, we actually pursue happiness. We actually ensure better life of these individuals. We told you that what is more unethical is that when parents know that living as a man or woman will actually cause a severe harm and in that community, and simply leaving that back, that is negligence. That is ignoring the problem and ignoring the harm that it will actually pursue for that individual. And that is why we said that is actually more unethical. That's what the opposition side is pursuing today. And also, when the status quo is that these actually individuals in that specific community have to choose abortion, have to choose abandoning the child, that is more unethical. And that is what opposition is trying to maintain in the status quo. We tell you that before we have a specific gender, we actually select a gender using the technology, and that is actually reducing the morality or the ethical problems having the same effect. So therefore, we believe that our policy is more ethical in terms of solving the same problem. Going to my second clash, what is best for the children? Now, opposition side simply came up and said that we can never be sure that the harm will actually exist, and therefore we should not have this. But there was a contradiction because they themselves say that they will say yes in case of medical harm or the genetic diseases. When even those medical situations, it is also about probability. It is also about more likely to have that diseases, which means that if parents feel that there's more higher possibility that these children will suffer from a disease, suffer from a harm, then parents' obligation and duty is to prevent these children from suffering from that diseases, which means that it is the same case. When these parents know that in the social atmosphere, it will lead to the direct harm of the children, why shouldn't the parents prevent that situation from actually happening? They talked about how children should choose, but is that possible? What the opposition side is saying in today's debate is that even though parents could have prevented the child from being ignored, being condemned by the society, they should not do anything and make the child to actually go through that process and make the child regret in the process. That is what they're saying, which is not the parents' duties. It's what a good parents should do. Because what parents should do is that if they know that it will lead to harm for that specific child, they should prevent it. Because we told you that what the opposition side is pursuing in today's debate is completely negligence. It's about, even though you know what will happen to the child, you should do nothing and leave that situation from happening. We believe that is negligence, and that is not best for the children's life. Because we told you that the reason why we actually allow this parents' right in the first place in our society, under our society, is because we know that parents will do their best for their children. We know that these parents will actually do for the best interest of the children. And that is why we allow many rights of these parents. And that's why we even go to the social trend of homeschooling or actually making your child to have a specific religion. All this is possible under the premise that parents will actually go for the best of the child. We believe that that standard should be the same even in the safe space, because if the parents can prevent that kind of harm actually happening, they should protect these children. Therefore, we are actually having a very ethical way of solving this issue, and at the same time, we are promoting the best for these children. So therefore, we are very proud to propose. Thank you.
네. 조커팀의 세 번째 토론자 곽준혁 학생의 찬성 의견 들어보셨습니다. 교수님
Thank
정리를
you.
좀 해주시죠.
네, 지금 이 세
Now
번째
I would
연사가
like to
자기 팀
invite
거를
the
마무리하면서 이제
opposition
공격을
side
했는데요.
네.
앞 두 연사와 마찬가지로 이번에도 부모가 아이를 위해서 최선의 그 선택을 할 것이다라는
네.
거에 포커스를 맞춰서 이게 선택을 하는 것이 성차별이 아니다라는 걸 굉장히 강조를 했어요.
예. 자, 그럼 포도인 팀의 세 번째 토론자 장한별 학생의 반대 의견
Before going
들어보시겠습니다.
into my speech, we want to clarify something from the opposition side regarding the genetic sex-related disease. Now, in our LO speech, we clarified that we would allow the surgery, this process of medication, in case that the child has a genetic situation in the family where because they're a girl or because they're a boy, they may inherit certain illnesses, like in a very mild case, color blindness, but in very extreme cases, ALS, which can lead to death. We said that that we will allow these parents to make the choice of choosing a boy instead of a girl or a girl instead of a boy for the sole purpose of avoiding such illnesses, because we believe it is for the prevention of unnecessary deaths for these child. But they distorted our definition of how we made this, of how we sorted this debate, how we are putting this completely out of the picture here, because this is in order to save lives, and they instead try to use it to incorporate it to justify their case, instead to prevent those crazy murders in conservative families, which we think is wrong, because first of all, it's not a prevalent problem according to their place setting, which was a developed country, and secondly, we need to take a completely different approach in this sort of matters. So now that we've cleared up the issue about the sex-related genetic diseases, we want to go to our three clashes of this debate. So the first clash is going to focus on the main problem that they identified. Their whole case was relying on the idea that there are many conservative families, even in developed nations, that try to kill these children or abort them or commit infanticide against them for the reason that they are born as a girl or in some cases a boy. But we're going to show you, first of all, that we have three responses to this claim. Now, the first response is that this is not a prevalent problem in their place setting, which was this house is the developed nation. This is in India, this is in China, where you see these problems occurring every day. Now, we want to ask them, if it's such a tiny problem that they want to address, if it's just a tiny portion of the population that they see is causing a problem, why are they suddenly giving the right to every single citizen, every single parent in our nation to choose the gender of their child? If it's such a tiny problem, the tiny percentage of the population that is causing the problem, we want them to justify that. If that's the main problem, why are they giving everyone else the right to do that as well? And secondly, we want to point out that if you are against this, if you're against children being aborted, of parents aborting their children against their will, which itself is a crime, abortion itself is a crime, then you need to take a completely different measure. Abortion is illegal. Forcing someone to take an abortion is illegal. Then you're supposed to strengthen such measures. You're supposed to make sure that that itself doesn't happen. Not suddenly grant everyone the right to suddenly choose their child's gender. And thirdly, we have a third response is that it actually backfires against their whole idea of protecting these children, because it only reaffirms this gender stereotype. The idea that, okay, you're right, you gave birth to a girl, this was wrong, we're going to let you correct it, but now you can change it into boy. We say that this is a completely wrong stance for a government to take. Take the example of gender discrimination, race discrimination in America during the 1900s. Was it okay for the American government to simply segregate the black community and the white community instead of trying to tackle the root cause of the issue, which was that people were making wrong decisions based on ethnicity? They should have tackled that issue. They should have said that perception itself is wrong. Instead of segregating them, only dealing with the side effect of the problem, never dealing with the root cause. This is no different from their policy right now. They agree with us saying that gender discrimination is wrong. But instead of trying to cure that problem itself, they are giving parents the justifications to change the child's gender instead of trying to accept it the way they is. We also think that their whole case was based on a very extreme example, something that is not prevalent within most developed countries. So we think that their whole focus, the whole clash about how to deal with these minor extreme problems fails. Now let's go on to the very, very, very tiny, the rest of their case, which was based on society as a whole. Now, the second clash was about whether this is in the children's best interest. Now, they wasted their whole first and second argument explaining that parents know best for their children. Now, we want them to show them why making your child a boy instead of a girl is in the child's best interest. If in the case of the minor crimes before, we could already explain to you why the method is wrong and why it can actually backfire by solidifying gender prejudices. But also, so we want them to prove them that if this isn't the case, why is choosing a boy over a girl in the child's best interest? They never specified that. They just said that parents care about their children a lot. We want them to clarify that. And also, we think that parents will have this expectation, this sort of gender role that they're trying to enforce upon these children. Because even before you are born, your parent decided whether you'll be born a boy or a girl. And you make decisions because you have expectations, because you think the results will turn out a certain way, because you think the girls will get along better with their mothers, that they'll be more caring, that they'll be easier to care for, because you think boys are going to be interested in sports, because, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
So you think that these parents will actually sacrifice everything for their children?
Yes, we want them to show that why choosing a boy over a girl, we repeat, why is that in the child's best interest? What does that have to do with the child's well-being? Whether you're born a girl or a boy, if the parent can raise them well, that absolutely does not affect the child's well-being and happiness. So there's a whole first and second argument fails. And also, we think that it also, and regarding the third clash about the social message, they said that their policy is only in regards to targeting the minority of extreme conservative families. We think that's not the case because you're giving everyone the choice here. And when everyone is given the choice, everyone starts thinking about it. Everyone starts thinking, is it better for me to have a boy or is it better for me to have a girl? Now, we told you that once you give people a choice, they start analyzing. They're going to be experts trying to compare the average money it takes to raise a boy and a girl, the average academic performance of a boy and a girl, the average like social abilities of a boy and a girl, how easier it is to raise a boy or a girl. We think this sort of identification over whether it's easier or better to raise a boy or a girl is extremely unhealthy because it goes against basic family values that you need to love your child no matter what. And also they said the gender ratio is not a serious problem. It is, because once you give everyone the choice, it's going to start to become a social implication. It's going to start the social message, a social trend regarding who to choose. Because as they said themselves in their first speech, people are selfish. And when they're given the choice, they are going to consider over it. They are going to start to make it. So this isn't going to be only limited to the extreme examples that they gave. And it's going to have a spillover effect to the entire society. And for these reasons, we're proud to oppose.
네, 포도인 팀의 장한별 학생의 반대 의견 들어보셨습니다. 교수님?
예, 세 번째 마무리 이 공격에서 아주 현명하게 잘했는데요.
네.
찬성팀에서 선진국에서 이게 일어날 거기 때문에 정말 필요한 사람들만 선택하게 될 거다라고
네네.
했더니 지금 이쪽 팀은 그렇다 그러면 그 소수를 위해서 뭐하를 일반화하느냐라고
네.
아주 역공을 잘 했어요.
네.
분명히 아주 재미있게 진행이 되네요.
네. 자, 그럼 반대팀 포도인의 이초아 학생의 마무리 발언
That
들어보겠습니다.
itself is unethical, and we've told you why this policy also has lethal consequences. Now, this debate boils down to two questions. The first question is whether parents have this right to choose their children's gender. Now, on the government side, they have told us that parents make sacrifice for their children, and that parents actually care about their children, and therefore the parents have the right to choose the gender of their children. However, we've told them, ladies and gentlemen, that that's not true, because that's even before the baby is born. The baby doesn't get to have any say in that. And we've told you how this policy is actually harmful for the children, how this policy poses a harm to the third party. Through our first argument and the third argument, we have proven to you through our first argument that children are being used as mere tools for the parents to satisfy their wants and desires. And through our third argument, we have proven to you how this harms the children by enforcing certain gender roles on them, ladies and gentlemen. Because if you have made a big investment in that technology to have your children as a certain gender, then you're going to have a certain expectation for your children to behave in a certain way. If that doesn't happen, then you can regret over what you have chosen. We say that this is also negative for family relations because it's going to result in conflicts between the parents and the children. And on to the second question, it was about what kind of consequences that this policy will have on the society and the family as a whole. Now, on the opposition side, we have proven to you through our second and third argument that this policy is very toxic for the society because if a certain perception, if that develops in society, that a certain gender is more valuable than another, then there will be social discrimination of a certain gender, that the inequality problem of gender will worsen, ladies and gentlemen. And to that, the government side has responded by saying that, well, actually, the parents choose simply based on preferences, and because it is preferences, it will not cause harm harm to the society. Well, we tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you are given this choice, then won't you take it very seriously? We have proven to you throughout our case how when these parents are given a choice to choose their children's gender, they will not choose based on whim. They will take it very carefully. They're going to weigh the costs and benefits of each gender, ladies and gentlemen. And if there is a cost-benefit analysis on genders, ladies and gentlemen, we think there's a very dangerous possibility for a social trend forming. For example, social trend for having more baby boys. We think that because these consequences can be caused, it is actually very lethal to the society. So on the opposition side, we have proven to you how this policy is very unethical for the babies, and we've also proven to you how this policy is very toxic to the society and to the family. We say that because we have proven to you all these things, the motion fails and they've built their policy on sand. Thank you.
네, 찬성팀 조코팀의 문재현 학생의 마무리
Thank you.
발언까지 들어봤습니다. 교수님 어떻게 들으셨나요?
예, 지금 이거 포드 윈 팀이었던
네.
것 같은데요. 예. 이쪽에 지금 일관되게 이야기했던 것처럼
네.
부모의 일방적인 결정, 그 부모만의 행복은 옳지 않고 오히려 이게 성역할 고착시키면서
네.
성차별 같은 사회 문제가 더 확산될 거다라는 자기 입장을 더 강조를 했죠.
네, 자 이번에는 앞서 말씀드린 찬성팀 조코팀의 문재현 학생 마무리 발언 들어보겠습니다.
Ethics and they only talk about the innate characteristic, yada yada yada. But the problem is the opposition whip came up and started to talk about the status quo's problem at the opposition whip. So obviously the only speaker who can respond to this is me, and this is really unfair. Even in that case, even we do consider that, we think that this minor problem is also a severe problem because we cannot sacrifice these children just to think about solving this problem. Because we think that if you wanted to solve the problem of this perception, you could have done it in a lot of ways. But why do you have to sacrifice these children to be condemned, to be always sacrificed in front of the society? We don't think that this was necessary in the first place. But you gotta avoid the necessary harms. But even in that case, even if we do consider that, we think that there are two most important questions that had to be answered in this debate, but opposition clearly failed to do so. First, about the moral and immorality. Secondly, on whether or not this is going to harm or benefit the child and the society. The first part is about the morality issue. We told you from the start that the parents can decide the best for the child. We knew that these children and the people, these parents know best for the child, not only just how they want to learn, but also about how these children will become when they live in the society. That's why we allowed such fundamental info in the start place. But ladies and gentlemen, they feared about the medical harms. They thought that this is going to be a big situation, so they just tried to woo this away. But ladies and gentlemen, because the parents also has a consideration of the same harm, not only by the medical harm, but also the status quo that we analyze, then we think that this is the same harm where the child can also be condemned for a very, very bad reason. So therefore, if the parent also knows about this situation, we think that the parent has a right to actually decide whether or not the child is going to be harmed fundamentally by the sex. So then it's the parent to decide whether or not this can be implemented. Now, secondly, they talked about how there's an innate characteristic that you cannot change. But we think that we allow parents already in a lot of things to innately change, but no response to that. We told you about how the parents can change, about the religious that can last forever, about the education of what kind of morality, about all these things, but no response to all these kinds of analysis that we gave you. They just said that we didn't respond, we actually did. Second point was about the harms and benefit analysis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they talked about really exotic cases of sex crimes and about how people would analyze and choose certain sex. But that is not going to happen because we told you from the start to the end, first it's about the liberal democracies, so this is not about the choices, but it's more like a preference. And secondly, even in that case, ladies and gentlemen, we think that parents are already willing to save and use a lot of money, even if they don't. It's not about the money, ladies and gentlemen, when parents look after you. That's the reason why there will not be an analysis there. Because as our Prime Minister from the start analyzed and told you that parents really do not care about the money, but the love itself to take care of you, then the analysis will not be a priority in deciding whether or not the parent prefers a child of a boy or a son. Now, secondly, they talked about how this is going to be making sex crimes. But that is not the case, clearly. Because firstly, I just told you it's a liberal democracy. And secondly, in this regional situation, then if you really want to talk about sex crimes, then what are you making the situation worse? You're making the situation worse by not giving a choice from the parents from the start place and not giving a choice from people to decide a better life. So these people will be more prone to this condemnation. On the other hand, we think that these kinds of situations will not happen because sex crime, we think that it's actually going to be stimulated to solve this because they cannot just leave the situation as a government would clearly analyze. So therefore, if you really want a good society, then you should not sacrifice individuals for what you want to achieve, but try to take them also with a good choice and giving them a good parental right. Thank you.
Congratulations go to FDW.